The story of Zacchaeus shows us a few things about Jesus. First of all, it shows us that he's willing to seek people out. He looks at Zach, he says, I must come to your house. He's not invited by Zach, he says, I'm coming to your house. And although we seek God and he always responds to that, ultimately the only reason we are ever in a relationship with him is because he seeks us first, because God comes looking for sinners. And I love the word must. There's one preacher that talks a bit about this called Charles Spurgeon. He says, what's going on in that must? It seems like Jesus has a sense of urgency. I've got to come and hang out with you. The first must is the necessity of love. It's like, I have to be near you. I have to somehow save you. Jesus seems to have that impression, and it's a bit like if you imagine you're walking along, a river or something, you see that some kid has fallen in the river. What would you do? You'd jump in, wouldn't you? Almost without thinking. You'd think, gosh, I must save you. Jesus seems to have that compulsion that comes from love. When he sees Zach, he probably knows his background, what he does. He knows what he's like, and he thinks, gosh, I have to get in there and I have to save you. The second must is, I must show people that actually I will have mercy on whom I will have mercy, and I won't be dictated to or swayed by people's opinions. And for so many of us, I know this is a big thing for me, we're so bothered what people think. And yet in this story you see how fickle people's opinions can be, how they can change so quickly. It's probably the same people who just a few verses earlier are praising God when Jesus heals the blind guy that are now muttering, oh my word, he's gone to be the guest of a sinner. You see how quickly they can change, and we're going to see that the rest of this story in Luke. You see that they cry Hosanna when he enters Jerusalem, and those same people just a few days later cry out, crucify him, crucify him. People, let's not get so excited when people speak well of us, because a gust of wind and all of their opinions can change in a moment. Jesus isn't driven by other people's agendas for him. He's driven by the fact that he has to show mercy to those around him, regardless of how that looks and regardless of what people think. And then the third must about him is that I must show people that anybody can be transformed. If Zach can have his life turned around from being really kind of awful and stealing from people to being someone who is incredibly generous and gives away 50% of his income, then there's hope for everybody. I must show people that. Loads of us today, we think, I don't have any good in me. What could God do with my life? And you see, it's like God can take Zach, who in that culture, there was no one worse really, and he can turn him into someone who gives away 50% of his income. How many of us today? And that's on the first days following Jesus. You can maybe after you've matured for a couple of years, how much you will be giving away then. Well, even after we've been following Jesus for a few years, most of us aren't even close to that. And God can transform any life. Jesus can transform any life. He really is an incredible God, and he's so worthy of our worship.